minister here at the Universalist Society of Heartland, and I welcome you to this gathering of Unitarian Universalists from all over our region and beyond. Of course, we normally hold this service at the First Church and Society of Barnard on the last Sunday of August, and this year we can't be there. But we're also aware that there will be people here who couldn't be with us if we were in Barnard. And so we celebrate, and we're grateful for the means and the will to come together, even when doing so is sometimes more challenging and more distancing than we wish. And we're looking for new ways to create community and connection and be together. Like my dear colleagues to introduce themselves. Jan.
Jan, do you want to go first? Well, I'll go. Maybe Jan, if you're getting ready. My name is Leon Dunkley. I serve the North Universalist Chapel Society, or North Chapel, in Woodstock, Vermont. I am really happy to see us all gathered from so many different churches and from so many different locations and from so many different people who are joining us from far away. So welcome if you're an Upper Valley person, and welcome if you're coming to us from farther away or outside of Vermont. It was an interesting sort of virtual walk up to the church. My favorite part of the Barnard service is just watching all the people from all different places having to park their car at some distance and sort of slowly wander up to the Barnard Church and slowly gather. Here we were like just popping up on screens, but it's a great way to gather. I'm so happy to see everybody. Welcome to this Sunday. Welcome to this morning. Jan?
Thank you, guys. I'm Jane Hutslar. I'm the minister here at the UU Congregation of the Upper Valley, and it is great to be together with such an extended community here today, and to be able to work with my wonderful colleagues, Paul and Leon. So again, welcome, and thank you for being here.
And of course, we have members and friends, hopefully from Universalist Society of Stratford, and as well as First Church and Society of Barnard, and maybe even some folks from the United Church of Bethel. And hey, let's just, all right, so this part's gonna be a little chaotic, but we can handle it, and a little organized chaos is, part of our faith tradition. So I'm gonna unmute you all in a moment. I'm gonna run through the congregations, and if you're here from that congregation, I want you to cheer and make some noise. And if you're not from that congregation, just, listen for a moment. And we're many different sizes, so, doesn't matter how loud your cheer is, it matters how much spirit. So who's here from, do we have anyone here? Who's here from Barnard, and the First Church and Society of Barnard? Well, we cheer for them anyways. And
oh, there's one cheer.
Yay! And anyone here from the United Church of Bethel? All right. And now, so I'm going alphabetical by town where you usually meet when you're in person. So and now we'll hear some people. Anyone here from the Universalist Society of Heartland?
Yay!
Hey, everybody! Yay! Come in.
Folks from the UU Congregation of the Upper Valley on the North Wild Lawn.
Yay! Hello, everybody!
Yay! Yay!
Folks from the Universalist Society of Stratford in South Stratford. I see a few of you out there. Right. And how about folks from the North Universalist Chapel Society of Winston?
Yay!
Yes, there's a lot of us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That was fun, and I'm sure we have some folks who are not from those congregations as well. We'll have ways to acknowledge you as we go. We're on Zoom, and just a few words about that. You'll be muted throughout most of the service. I think you just saw why, especially with 119 folks logged in, and more of us because We have multiple folks for each camera. So it was good to have so many folks here. During the sharing portions, we'll invite you to use the chat area to share. And after the service, if you like, you'll be invited to participate in smaller breakout groups for a coffee hour, a little Zoom coffee hour. And you don't have to go when that time comes. You'll be invited. So you won't be automatically stuck in a room if you're hoping. Sometimes we do that and people like make a mad dash out when we get to the postlude. So you don't have to do that. You just can not accept the invitation to join the coffee hour when the time comes. Big thank you to our musicians this morning who have pre-recorded their pieces so we can share them together. And I'll note that for the pieces we're sharing today, I've connected their music with various images. So don't blame the musicians for the photos if there's anything you don't like. And in trying to represent all our congregations, I realized I didn't manage to track down photo credits. And with a child who's working on being a paid photographer, I'm aware of that issue. But just if you're a photographer and we don't recognize you in that way, know that we honor your work and we'll seek ways to honor you in the time to come. So thank you to our musicians from UUCUV, David Nirenberg and Bob Lucier, who will offer the prelude in just a moment. Thank you to our musician and co-leader Leon Dunkley, of course, of North Chapel. And thank you to Patty Talbot, the music director here at Heartland. Patty in her 45th year of service in that role. Patty's recorded our hymns, and I will note, because our congregations all do this slightly differently, I'll note that in our hymn videos today, we'll just have Patty's accompaniment, and we won't have anyone singing the songs to lead. But we've chosen some hymns that are familiar to most Unitarian Universalists, and the lyrics will come up where they're supposed to in the accompaniment, and that, I hope, will help you sing along in your own space. It is one challenge of online platforms. They've not found a way yet to let us sing together live. But the drive in so many of us to do that is so strong. I keep thinking if this goes on for a while longer, maybe someday we'll have something like that. Until then, when the time comes, we'll have the joy of seeing each other sing in our own spaces in the gallery. But now I invite you to deepen into worship as we share our musical prelude.
Again, there we go. I offer these words this morning from our colleague, Reverend Gretchen Haley. Hold nothing back. Bring everything you are and long for. All you love, all you fear to lose, the songs that live in your bones, the stories of your breath, the ache that comes to you in the night. Make this time holy, offering the beauty of your beating heart breaking and breaking open again. Bring it all here to the altar we have learned to make together. The sacred space we claim, the insistent thread of love and loyalty we refuse to let go. Invoke now the spirit of righteous anger and grief that you keep at bay, yet still burns within you. Know this fire as your inheritance. Remember yourself here in rites ancient and new. Feel in this circle all those who have fought for freedom, not just for one, but for all. The steady march of courageous love that lives here and now and calls us on. Come, let us worship together.
Our opening hymn will be, it's number 347 if you happen to be in the hymnal, Gather the Spirit. And I just wanted to mention the images that we're using for this hymn are all old photos of congregations from our area that are no longer active. And they are all over. So maybe you may not even know that some of them existed. You could see this as a kind of a sad presentation and going through these congregations, former congregations, but we're lifting them up here not to lament their loss, but to honor and celebrate and remember all the courageous souls that came before us in our region and people of faith. And when we remember them, we honor the truth that we are a part of a much larger cloud of witnesses, even when we gather from 5 or 6 or more congregations. There were people of great faith, spiritual ancestors that have been all around us, and they're part of gathering the Spirit. So we'll share that together. And I'll mention, we'll have an introduction, and then when the lyrics start, that's when the hymn starts. I invite you now to participate in something we have been doing most weeks. And as I light the chalice here in Heartland Four Corners, and perhaps you're lighting chalices in your space or chalices of the Spirit, if not actual flames, I invite you to use the chat and write where you're lighting your chalice today, where you're joining us from. And while we're doing it, I'll highlight our chalice. And the chalice is lit in Heartland Four Corners in the historic blue pulpit. And oh, look at this, it's lit so many wonderful places. Chalice is lit in Lyme, New Hampshire, and on the Heartland-Quechee Road in Heartland, and in Taftsville, Vermont, in Chicago, Illinois, in Wilder, Vermont, on Weed Road in Heartland, in Lebanon, New Hampshire, on Route 14 in White River Junction, in Springfield, Vermont, on Damon Road in Heartland, Grantham, New Hampshire, in beautiful downtown South Pomfret, Vermont, on a hilltop in Norwich, on Bible Hill Road in Brownsville, in Heartland Three Corners Village, in Etna, New Hampshire, and Stockbridge, Vermont, and Somerville, Massachusetts, in Thetford Hill, Vermont, and West Rupert, Vermont, and West Windsor, Vermont, and Ann Arbor, Michigan, and Quechee, and Brownsville, Vermont, and Hanover, New Hampshire, in Proctorsville, Vermont, in Grantham, New Hampshire, in Orange, New Hampshire, in Newark, Delaware, in Silver Spring, Maryland, in Mount Holly, Vermont, in West Woodstock, in Altamont, New York, in Stottsburg, New York, in the Mid-Hudson Valley, in Gig Harbor, Washington. Good morning in Washington, in Quechee, in Thetford Center, in Cornish Center, at North Chapel, and Spectacle Pond in Enfield, in Lebanon and South Woodstock, and Heartland Hill, and also in Spectacle Pond in Enfield, from Jersey City, New Jersey, in Reservoir Road in Hanover, in Woodstock, and Advent Hill in Heartland, by Lulls Brook in Heartland, in East Barnard, Vermont, in Circle Woods in Newport, New Hampshire, in Bethesda, Maryland, in Woodstock, Vermont, in Westminster West, Vermont, on Brothers Road in Heartland, in Lebanon, in Corinth, Vermont, and Tacoma, Washington. Oh my goodness. Underhill Center, Vermont, Stratham, New Hampshire, Half Moon, New York, Woodstock Village by the river, in Bradford, Vermont, in Hazen Street in White River Junction, in South Stratford, in Woodstock, in Royalton, on Dingleton Hill Road in Cornish, in Hanover and Barnard and Woodstock and Grafton Pond, in Unity, New Hampshire, in Lebanon, New Hampshire, in tropical South Woodstock, in Lake Gardner and by Lake Gardner in Bath, New Hampshire, in Bethel, Vermont, and Wethersfield Bow, and Piermont, New Hampshire, and Sharon, Vermont, and South Stratford and Pomfret in Houston, Texas, and Jeffersonville, Indiana, and probably even more. Pardon me while I get my act together here. I invite you, if you like to, in your own space, to read along in the order of service. Our chalice lighting is written by a late member of our congregation, Sheila Drury. As we light this chalice, let us remember how all our individual lights can become one great flame. Welcome, one and all.
I share with you this poem this morning by Araceli Gourmet. You are who I love. You selling roses out of a silver grocery cart. You in the park feeding the pigeons. You cheering for the bees. You with cats in your voice in the morning, feeding cats. You protecting the river. You are who I love. Delivering babies, nursing the sick. You with henna on your feet and a gold star in your nose. You taking your medicine, reading the magazines. You looking into the faces of young people as they pass, smiling and saying, all right, which they know means, I see you, family. I love you. Keep on. You dancing in the kitchen, on the sidewalk, in the subway, waiting for the train because Stevie Wonder, Hector Lavoe, La Lupe. You stirring the pot of beans, you washing your father's feet. You are who I love. You reciting Darwish, then June. Feeding your heart, teaching your parents how to do the doogie, counting to 10, reading your patient's charts. You are who I love. Changing policies, standing in line for water, stocking the food pantries, making a meal. You are who I love. Writing letters, calling the senators, you who, with the seconds of your body, with your time here, arrive on buses, on trains, in cars, by foot, to stand in the January streets against the cool and brutal offices saying, your cruelty does not speak for me. You are who I love. You struggling to see. You struggling to love or find a question. You better than me. You kinder and so blistering with anger. You are who I love. Standing in the wind, salvaging the umbrellas, graduating from school, wearing holes in your shoes. You are who I love. Weeping or touching the faces of the weeping. You, Violetta Parra, grateful for the alphabet, for sound, singing toward us in the dream. You carrying your brother home, you noticing the butterflies, sharing your water, sharing your potatoes and greens. You who did and did not survive. You who cleaned the kitchens, you who built the railroad tracks and roads. You who replanted the trees, listening to the work of squirrels and birds. You are who I love. You whose blood was taken, whose hands and lives were taken, with or without your saying, yes, I mean to give. You are who I love. You who the borders crossed, you whose fires you dissent with rage, so in love with the earth. You writing poems alongside children. You cactus, water, sparrow, crow, you my elder, you are who I love. Summoning the courage, making the cobbler, getting the blood drawn, sharing the difficult news, you always planting the marigolds, learning to walk wherever you are, learning to read wherever you are, you baking the bread, you come to me in dreams, you kissing the faces of your dead wherever you are, speaking to your children in your mother's languages, tootsing the birds. You are who I love, behind the library desk, leaving who might kill you, crying with the love songs, polishing your shoes, lighting the candles, getting through the first day despite the whisperers sniping, fail, fail, fail. You are who I love. You who beat and did not beat the odds. You who knows that any good thing you have is the result of someone else's sacrifice and work. You who fights for reparation. You are who I love. You who stands at the courthouse with the sign that reads, no justice, no peace. You are who I love. Singing Leonard Cohen to the snow, you with glitter on your face, wearing a kilt and violet lipstick. You are who I love, sighing in your sleep. You playing drums in the procession, you feeding the chickens and humming as you hem the skirt, you sharpening the pencil, you writing the poem about the loneliness of the astronaut. You wanting to listen, you trying to be so still. You are who I love. Mothering the dog, standing with horses, you in brightness and in darkness, throwing your head back as you laugh, kissing your own hand. You carrying the bear beret from the mill and the jug of oil pressed from the olives of the trees you belong to. You studying stars, you are who I love, braiding your child's hair. You are who I love, crossing the desert and trying to cross the desert. You are who I love, working the shifts to buy books, rice, tomatoes. Bathing your children as you listen to the lecture, heating the kitchen with the oven open, up early, up late. You are who I love. Learning English, learning Spanish, drawing flowers on your hand with a ballpoint pen, taking the bus home. You are who I love. Speaking plainly about your pain, sucking your teeth at the airport terminal television every time the politicians say something that offends your sense of decency, of thought, which is often. You are who I love. Throwing your hands up in agony or disbelief, shaking your head, arguing back out loud or inside of yourself, holding close your incredulity, which yes, too, I love. I love your working heart, how each of its gestures, tiny or big, stand beside my own agony, building a forest there. How FU becomes a love song. You are who I love, carrying the signs, packing the lunches with the rain on your face. You at the edges and shores, in the rooms of quiet, in the rooms of shouting, in the airport terminal, at the bus depot saying no, and each of us looking out from the gorgeous unlikelihood of our lives at all, finding ourselves here, witnesses to each other's tenderness, which this moment is fury, is rage, which this moment is another way of saying, you are who I love. You are who I love. You and you and you are who. That poem that I just read to you was sent to me by 3 different people this week. 3 people sent it to me and I heard what they were saying. This is something we need to hear right now. This is a reminder, they were saying, a love song, a whisper of hope. And this poem helped me to make some sense of the vague and wispy thoughts I had about reimagining community. As we reimagine community here, 5 Unitarian Universalist congregations joining to claim our kinship, our community, while at the same time sitting individually and in family groups at home, on our sofas, front porches, kitchen tables, backyards, separated physically and through this technology connected. But of course, it's not the technology that connects us. As Araceli Gourmet says in her poem, it is the love we have for each other, including those we do not know personally, that links us. We are connected to each other through our humanity, through the truth of our oneness. We are so very knitted together in this intricately woven web of all life. How we relate to each other tugs the fine spun threads and is felt by others and circles out and out and out. The imagery of this poem brings to life people of different races, ages, cultures, places, passions, all wrapped in the truth of love. loving this world and each other through showing up, standing up, paying attention, caring. I'm not so sure we are reimagining community so much as rededicating ourselves to community, to the community of our own UU congregation, to the wider community of Upper Valley UUs, but mostly rededicating ourselves to the whole world community where we reimagine us living with this strong love of humanity, imagining how it connects us to each other as if by colorful threads. This world community we are called to co-create, a community reimagined out loud, where we believe you are who I love is true for every one of us. Where we believe that you are who I love is true for everyone. True for Jacob Blake, you are who I love. True for the people who gathered to protest the killings of yet another Black man to police violence. You are who I love. For all of us in our rage, our confusion, our sadness, our strength, you are who I love. For every person here as you live each day in your own best way, you are who I love. For every one of you with your own brand of courage, with your tender, broken, open heart, you are who I love.
Well, I invite you now, if you like, to use the chat area to lift up a joy or sorrow from your own life, and in this way to help create our common prayer. And during this time and through the time of the prayer, I'm going to turn our attention towards our chalice, which I hope will help you reflect. And if not, you can close your eyes and look out your window or reflect however is best for you. And while you are putting a joy or sorrow in the chat area, I'm going to lift up a couple from our congregation, lighting a candle of sorrow and celebration for the life of Fred Coley, who was for a long time in earlier years a steadfast and dedicated member of our congregation and who died recently. And for our neighbors down the road here in Heartland, we light a candle of joy and new possibility. Last week, they called their new minister. The folks at the First Congregational Church of Heartland called their new minister, Amy Davin, last Sunday, and we celebrate with them. A number of folks from Heartland light a candle for Joan Ferriel for her birthday. Happy birthday, Joan. From Laura, happy birthday to Carla Jimenez tomorrow. From Colleen Spence, lighting a candle of gratitude, hope, and concern for all teachers. Amen. Parents, professors, pre-K, K-12, virtual and in person, who have started and who are about to school. And I'll add for our school board members, who Colleen is one. A sorrow from Katie Sawyer for the passing of our dear friend Don Kreutsch. From Glenn and Nancy Walker, a candle for their sister-in-law who's having a tough time. From Tim Travers, we're joyful for the 3 children working hard towards racial justice, each in their own way. From Muggs Johnson, candle of joy for being with 2 grandsons and seeing their strengths. From Marcia Peterson, joy for the new children who are just coming into this world and hope for their future. From Leon Dunkley, candle for his beloved mother. From Muggs Johnson, a candle of concern for the election in November. From Sarah Bruce, a candle of gratitude for the athletes that took a stand this week. May their action push us closer to the goal of racial equality in this country. From Lori Fortini, joy of seeing her Harmony Night friends, Mary and Joan. From Fred, lifting up just the joy of the old pictures of our churches and knowing that our roots run deep. From Lucille, joy and sorrow that daughter and her and new from their strength and new beginnings and hope as they endure a difficult divorce. From Andine, a prayer for Kathy Rodriguez's family, and Kathy died of COVID this week. From Jan Hutslar, a candle of celebration for the marriage of Ellie and Alden yesterday. Many blessings upon them. From Sally, a joy in getting her battery charging so she can be with us. From Diane Rochford, a candle of joy for Jada as she begins her journey as a first-year college student. From Susan, a candle of joy for Dave and Sarah Morin, celebrating their 25th anniversary earlier this week. From Leah, gratitude for the reminder of early UU congregations and the historic buildings that survived to remind us of them. From Karen, joyful gratitude for all members of the UU family who have supported her during her healing and finding a new home. From Tara, joy for the nursing home staff going the extra mile to help residents deal with isolation. From R. Stevens, joy for all the kindred spirits gathered together today. From Marcia, sorrow at the loss of her brother on Friday. From Maureen, prayers to the 17-year-old who opened fire on the protesters, believing what he was told and thinking that he was defending the honor of his people. From Tambray, a carol of joy for the outpouring of love and support from near and far following the passing of a wonderful father this month. Candles concern for their mother and family as they move forward without him. From Phil, a candle of joy to all the animals, flowers, rivers, and streams in beautiful nature. From Elizabeth, a candle of perseverance to continue working remotely in human services. Candle of joys for the reds, yellows, and oranges starting to grow through the trees. From R&M, a candle of sorrow for their friend Hans, whose wife has terminal cancer and couldn't care for their home, and who couldn't be cared for anymore in their home. It's from Rob and Marie. From Maggie, joy for her mom, Jan, for a pending move to a new home. From Katrin, a candle of joy for the wonderful cleansing rains of late. From Becca White, joy for the Vermont legislature being back virtually and for the next month of service. From Bob, deep, deep love to dear friend Peter Fox Smith. And from Chuck, a candle of joy for tomatoes and corn. And we hold in our hearts all the joys and sorrows that remain unspoken, but not unheard in our hearts. And I welcome you to join in a time of reflection, meditation, and prayer. First briefly with my words, and then a time of silence, and then singing Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, thank you for this time to be together, from nearby and from far away. Thank you for this gathering of spirits, this circle of kinship, seeking to live the truth of faith, hope, and love in the midst of a troubled and troubling world. May we have wisdom and conviction to be building always ever more welcoming communities, an ever more just society, and ever more interconnected webs of mutuality and friendship. And together may we raise up in each of us and in our congregations and our world ever more strength, courage, tenacity, and spirit, so that we may with time and with care live into truth the beloved community our world is meant to be. Amen. In spirit, hear our individual reflections and prayers lifted up now in silence. Well, I bring you a poem today, a reading from Farron Barella. And Farron is a rabbinical student. She's from Southwest Vermont. She happens to be a dear old friend of mine. I met her when she was 9 or 10 years old as a camper in a program I was part of in those days. And the last few years, Farron's been working at on the staff of the Star King School for the Ministry. And so it's been a great joy that many of my colleagues, including Jan, have gotten to know her too. And it's also been an excuse for me to stay in touch with her. Some of you from our congregation know she and her family sometimes come to our 7 o'clock Christmas Eve service. But Farron wrote this poem back in March, the same week that Jan and Leon and I, some of you remember, were supposed to be exchanging pulpits. That was a plan that, of course, shifted when we and the whole world realized that more drastic action was going to be needed. So March 13th, I'm mindful that Farron's words were written when nearly all of us were not aware what the coming months would bring. They were written in a time when Breonna Taylor and George Floyd were still alive, and when Jacob Blake was not paralyzed. Though many of you noting the date on the poem may know that this poem was written just a few hours before Breonna Taylor was killed by a Louisville police officer while she was sleeping in her home. So these words have been with me through this time. They struck me then and they struck me now. I find that they continue to shine some light on possibilities of the times we're living in, and that they speak wisely of the importance of our shared community, both in terms of the health crisis we're facing and the social crisis that hopefully, finally, our society is awakening to begin to understand. So I'm grateful to share these, for the chance to share these with you today. This is a test by Farron Barella. This is a test in spiritual will. This is a test in community care. This is a test of our capacity to love. This is a test of our capacity to receive love. This is a test of capitalism. This is a test of globalism. This is a test of individualism. This is a test of the nuclear family. This is a test of our medical industrial complex and our emergency response systems and our mental health system and our religious communities. This is a test of our prayers, of our songs, of our art. This is a test of you and you and you and me in recognizing that we are not you and you and you and me, but rather we are we. This is a test of whether the ancient wisdom still lies dormant deep within our souls, and whether we will have the tools to retrieve it, to breathe life back into its nostrils that we have formed with our bare hands, and trust the life-giving capacity of our breath. This is a test of our breath. This is a test of whether online community can serve all our needs, and whether those with privilege can recognize that for some, online community is the only means of serving their needs. This is not a test of my immune system or your immune system or your immune system, but the collective immune system, the undulating immune system of the Earth's breath force, hissing and steaming under 250 years of industrial revolution and smog. This is a test in accountability and in fear, and whether fear trumps accountability or accountability trumps fear. This is a test of our political system to regulate itself and orient toward the serving of its people, or to collapse under the weight of sudden death. This is a test of our people and our ability to recognize when we need regulation and when we need revolution. This is a test of the trees and the waters and the herbs peeking through the thawing ground, crying out, "Use me, I'm here for your aid. I am here for our aid." This is a test of our collective will to live and our collective will to let go of what we believe ourselves to be owed. A luxurious life filled to the brim with the extra unnecessary sparkle of thing over the extra unnecessary sparkle of the space between our souls. To let go into life that is mutually reinforcing rather than mutually negating. This is not a test. This is our life. This is all we have. This is all that the earth has. Come, let us join souls and dance our way into life together. Well, I'm deeply grateful to Farron Barilla, and I find that her words say a lot about what's needed in our society and in our hearts and minds and souls if we're to become the people and the communities that we hope to become. I'm mostly going to let Farron's words speak for themselves, but as a too long time student, and as someone who for many years was a teacher, I just find I want to remind myself and you that, you know, when the word test comes up, it carries for a lot of us a bunch of anxiety. But we can remember that tests aren't always tools of people with power over other people, trying to figure out who knows stuff and who doesn't, who fits where and who doesn't. For people really seeking to learn and wise people really trying to teach, tests are a tool that help you understand what you have really learned and what you're still working on. So tests stand as encouragement to continued learning and inspirations to hold on to learning even when that learning is complex and tough and takes a long, long time, maybe years, maybe generations to achieve. As Farron might say, as she kind of did say in the poem, good and needed tests, they aren't tests, they're life. And we can remember that. It's clear to me, and I bet to you and to anyone paying attention and to anyone trying to ground themselves in love and life and possibility, it's clear to us all that as a nation and as communities and sometimes as individuals, we are not currently passing many of Farron's tests. Because this life is all that we have, all that the earth has, the tragic failures of beloved community we've experienced and are living, they're beyond frustrating. They're angering, they're infuriating, and they're also saddening, sometimes even devastating. So we need sometimes to scream and to lash out, and we need sometimes to mourn, to weep, to lament, the old language of faith would say. We must always know the truth that we can and we should always feel what we feel. And we must always find ways to express and honor the often painful truth that is crying out in our souls. But as true students of life, as true students looking to learn, grounded in faith, hope, love, and possibility, we can also know that as well as inspiring our anger and our pain, the failures of our times can be inspirations to something more. That even in failure, especially in failure, our deep and true desire to learn, to change, to grow, it can light a fire in us that won't be put out. A drive to learn that burns in our hearts and souls, unquenchable, with a commitment that we will become who we are meant to be together. A commitment that no force, no authority, no tradition, no conformity can crush. We've all found cause for anger and lamentation over and over again in these troubled and troubling times. I pray that we also find within us a flame of possibility and tenacity and courage and strength, so that we'll be ever more dedicated to building and being the beloved community in our midst. Thank you.
I love how brave we are. I love how brave that we might be. There's one of my favorite writers, philosophers, theologians is a man named Cornel West, and he says, you know, I look around at the world and I have no reason to feel optimistic, yet I remain a prisoner of hope. On sunny days and sometimes on raining days, I try to live that out. I've come to terms with the fact that I am probably an anxious meditator at best. It's hard for me to rise in the morning and sit quietly. I'm much more comfortable grabbing a guitar before breakfast and heading out to the Barnard General Store to sit by a lake and to play for a while, maybe an hour or so I can settle myself and ground myself. And it's amazing how beautiful and how inspiring just the natural world can be. I don't know you all very well, so it would be awkward under normal circumstances to invite you all over to my apartment, but I want to do that. Not the current apartment that I live in, but an apartment that I lived in Hyattsville, Maryland, when I still lived down there. I live in rural Vermont now. Hyattsville, Maryland is the middle of DC, Washington, DC. There are buses going by. There are 3-car dealerships on the road that I used to live on. There are more people in my apartment building than there are in the town in which I currently reside. But I lived in this little apartment that had a walk-in closet. And all of the lights in my apartment were very bright, but and they would keep me up at night. And I would sometimes put the light in the closet on just so that I could have a softer light before I would relax and go to sleep. And sometimes I would fall asleep before I would turn the light out. And I would wake up in the morning and I'd be like, I can't believe I did that again. And I did that a number of times before I realized that that was actually a little trivial thing that was reminding me of something deeper. That it was important to keep a light on in life. So I wrote a song about that light in my closet. And I'd like to share it with you now. It was recorded in the sanctuary of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Silver Spring with 2 of its congregants, Wendy Langsner and Dean Kerrigan. I'm so grateful for their continued love and artistry in my life. Here's to hope.
And everybody needs a little place to go. And everybody needs someone that they know. I saw an angel taking photographs of God. I saw a poor man choosing life against the odds. So we keep a light on in the day, keep a light on every way we find. Now I've known many who have walked along this road. Bound for glory's sign upon their heavy load. But I've known no one on this path to reach the end. Without surrendering the things we most defend. So we keep a light on in the day, keep a light on every way we find. I heard a flower sing the softest lullaby. Wrote the words I could remember on the sky. I touched an ocean that became a mandolin. I prayed for heaven under heaven to begin. So we keep a light on in the day, keep a light on every way we find. So we keep a light on in the day, keep a light on every way we find.
Everybody needs a little place to go, and everybody needs someone that they know. We all need home and safety. We all need true community. I saw a poor man choosing life against the odds. I saw an angel taking photographs of God. That's the line. There's this spot, there's some places in our world where the sun is just so beautiful when it goes down. And there's this one spot in a place that I really love where people gather every year, year after year with their cameras and take picture after picture of the sunset. I have many of these pictures myself, trying to force into the camera what we feel in our hearts. And there are some things that won't fit inside the camera. This is the meaning of what it means to be an angel trying to take photographs of God. I saw a poor man choosing life against the odds. This line has real meaning for men like Mike Bell Sr. and Jacob Blake Sr. Mike Bell Sr., whose namesake, white son of 21 years, was killed by Kenosha, Wisconsin police in 2004. And Jacob Blake Sr., whose namesake black son of 29 years, was shot 7 times by the Kenosha, Wisconsin police in 2020, just a week ago. The shooting took place in front of Jacob Jr.'s 3 children of 3 and 5 and 8 years of age. Jacob Jr. survived the shooting, but is now paralyzed below the waist. The meaning of I saw a poor man choosing life against the odds. Mike Sr. and Mike Jr. are those poor men, and so are we. We leave a light on in the day. Now, I've known many who have walked along this road, the bound for glory sign upon their heavy load, but I've known no one on this path to reach the end. Without surrendering the things we most defend, life is short, and none of us gets out of here alive. How do we make these days, the living days, as meaningful as we possibly can? I heard a flower sing the softest lullaby, and I wrote the words I could remember on the sky. Flowers, of course, don't speak, and they don't write down words, but we can still listen to their song. if we quiet ourselves down enough. I touched an ocean that became a mandolin. I have no idea what that line means. I just love it. But I do pray for heaven under heaven to begin. And we will find a way, surely, as we go through these days, these hard and trying days, for that heaven under heaven to begin. Jacob Jr. needs it. I need it. And when I allow myself to be fearless, when I conquer the anxiety in my own heart and can settle and ground, I know that we will make it. I'm very proud of us. I very deeply believe in us. Stay quiet, stay strong, and stay beautiful.
Well, in this service, we've created some traditions over the years, and we can't honor all of them. But briefly now, we're going to close our service out with the blessing our circle of kinship, which is something we've done now for a number of years. And we'll go through the congregations, the 6 that are officially Upper Valley UU congregations. And for each one, we'll invite you, if you're part of that congregation, if you're part of or connected in some way, to use the chat area to lift up any good news, any tough news, any needed prayers, or any celebrations that are going on in that congregation. And then we'll offer a very short prayer of blessing after each. We're not going to read these out loud, so I encourage you to to follow along in the chat. And we begin with the folks from the First Church and Society of Barnard. And for those who don't know, Barnard is a very small congregation that meets and has met for more than 100 years, only in the summertime. And they do an amazing job of keeping the faith going, and they've done so much work on their buildings in the last many years that they have. It's become a center of connection and performance and sharing throughout the whole community of Barnard. And and I miss being in Barnard today. Jan wrote that in there, and miss being in Barnard, miss being able to go to Silver Lake afterwards. But it's a joy to be here with you and to be connected with our dear friends and neighbors in Barnard. And so I offer a blessing, knowing that we're holding the folks of the First Universalist Church and Society of Barnard as they continue to bring their faith to bear in the summertime and throughout the year. We lift them up with gratitude for their unique place in our shared community together. And together we share a blessing on the congregation in Barnard, on its people and their work and community in our world. Amen.
I'd like to offer the opportunity for anyone who would like to send anything in the chat about the Bethel Church. That's the United Church of Bethel, which is both the Unitarian Universalist and a UCC church. So if you have any specific blessings or prayers you would like to send to them, please put them in the chat. We'll give a few minutes, a moment just for that, and then I will offer a blessing to them. I offer prayers from all of us and love, resilience, courage, and grace for the members and friends of the United Church of Bethel, Vermont. as each person involved in that congregation feels their own kinship with all that is, with each other, with Unitarian Universalists throughout the country, and with the world around them. May we all remember that we are who we love. So may it be.
I'd like to invite those associated with the First Universalist Society of Heartland Four Corners to send their thoughts and prayers to the chat. And as they gather, I will share my great fondness for all of the churches in the area, but Heartland is special. I did my candidating week in Heartland. It was the first place I preached in Vermont. I just love being in that part of the world, right next to the skunk, which I love. And I'm so grateful for your spirit, for your perseverance, for your groundedness, for your insight, and for your clarity. We are holding the First Universalist Society of Heartland Four Corners. We lift them up with gratitude for their unique place in our shared community. And together, we share a blessing on Heartland Four Corners, on its people, and their work in the community and our world.
And I invite folks from the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Upper Valley in Norwich to share, and we'll overlap in some of the sharing in the chat area, that's okay. And to lift up good news, tough news, anything that we should know, and gratitude and blessings. And so I offer a prayer blessing that we are holding the Unitarian Universalist congregation of the Upper Valley in our hearts. We lift them up with gratitude for their unique place in our shared community together. And together we offer a blessing on UUCUV, on its people and their work in our community and in our world. Thank you for being there. Amen.
I invite thoughts and prayers, reflections on joys and reflections on challenges that are experienced by those who are associated with the Universalist Society of Stratford. I hold space for that, for the sendings in of those thoughts and prayers, including the affirmation of Telas Whitfield, who has moved on to Brattleboro after serving that congregation for 6 years. Telas is an old friend of mine who I knew before coming here. I miss her terribly, but I will go find her and make sure that she doesn't leave the circle of my love, nor should she leave the circle of our love, as we hold both her and her ministry and the congregation, the beloved congregation that she served. We are holding the Universalist Society of Stratford. We lift them up in gratitude and in joy and in beauty. We share blessing on that community, on its people, on their courage, on their tenacity, and on their contribution to the world.
And now I would like to invite any prayers, blessings, or thoughts that anyone would like to send for the Woodstock Church, to please put that information in the chat for the Woodstock congregation. I had the great privilege last year of having the opportunity to preach at the North Chapel, I can never remember, North Universalist Chapel Society in Woodstock. And I was met with such warmth and welcome and openness and friendliness. And I just have a really warm place in my heart for the congregation in Woodstock. And when I think about the Woodstock Church, I think about the river that flows right beside you there. And so my blessing today for the Woodstock congregation has to do with the river. May the river that runs beside your beautiful sacred space continue to offer you reminders during this time that's challenging and self-isolating and distant. Reminders to flow, to surrender, to sparkle, to accept and allow what is. May that river of love flow through every member and friend of the congregation, through each person who is involved and through the minister. May everyone there be blessed and held in love. So may it be. Amen.
You should feel free to continue writing good news about any of our congregations and congregations beyond the Upper Valley in the chat. All right, we'll sing our hymn, our closing hymn. It's number 1008 in Singing the Journey. Joyce Poley's When Our Heart is in a Holy Place. Well, I invite you, if you have the order of service, to pick it up, and we'll share our congregational commission. These are words we read weekly in Heartland, and this comes from the end of Hosea Ballou's book, The Treatise on Atonement. And this was in a section where he was imploring Universalists not to fall apart and start warring against each other and arguing with each other, but to keep the faith and to stay together as our faith grew. And I think of that 200-year-old exhortation often. As we share these words to send each other out. If we agree in love, there is no disagreement that can do us any injury. But if we do not, no other agreement can do us any good. Let us endeavor to keep the unity of the Spirit in the bonds of peace. Amen. And we extinguish our chalice flame, but we carry its warmth and light within us until we meet again.
And for our benediction, which will be followed by a postlude, I offer just these words. In these days of such great and such deep divisiveness, may we breathe deeply enough to know the power of life. May we be at peace, and may we remain grounded, with the soles of our feet bare to the touch of the landscape of the upper valley, or wherever it is that we find ourselves. And may we dare greatly enough to send our hearts bravely to the heavens. May we be fearless and released from the suffering. May we be skybound and singularly free. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen.
UUCV folks, I improvised a little bit there in the historical photo, so I hope that was okay. Well, thank you, friends, for being here with us. And in just a moment, you'll be invited, if you like, to join in a breakout room for some discussion. And you're welcome to do that. And we'll close down the meeting after time. But it's great to have everyone here. Thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to guess how many breakout rooms we need. And if you happen to end up in a breakout room by yourself, that's okay. We'll move you to a better one. But here we go.